Good morning, YouTube. This is LA Prepper, trying to get some manual focus. There we go. Okay, maybe I'll put it on the tripod here so I can talk about it for just a second. And forgive me, I know this. I could screen cap this, but I just don't want to go through the deal of. I just don't want to go through editing a video right now. See if I can get this a little bigger. God, I really can't. Well, anyways, Christ almighty. Trying to zoom in and it's like totally not working. This is a partly current model of my bug out boat. It's not completely current because see how there's point at it without the mouse because I don't like that message on the screen. So this part of the frame is correct. The three boards are correct. This cross member is correct. But I'm not going to have these surfboards or these outriggers, if you will, this far back. I'm actually going to have them centered a little further forward, basically where this is. This probably goes a little further back in real life, but it's about where that is. So the issue that I'm having is that there's too much weight in the rear. When you're windsurfing at higher speeds, you are standing near the rear of the board, and you have the sail angled in a certain way such that the sail is providing sort of a vector of thrust in this direction. So part of it is providing you a little bit of lift, and part of it is providing you some thrust. At any rate, as well as other forces, listing forces and such. So at full speed, the weight is not as big of a deal, but when you're going slow, there's going to be way too much weight in the rear. And this was one design I considered, but after thinking about how heavy the 2x4 is and the additional frames right here, what little flotation I'm going to get from the rear of these surfboards is really not a lot. So I'm trying to brainstorm ways to add flotation in this rear section, just the rear section, because otherwise the only other way to deal with my weight issue is to move this whole rear frame forward, and that's kind of a headache for several different reasons. I could try to move just the seat forward, but the problem is the sail is so big that if I'm not... The reason originally that the seat is this far back is that because the mast goes, right here, and the sail is so long that it would hit me in the face when I'm sitting down. Obviously, windsurfing boards are not designed to be made sailboats. So I'd have to move the mast forward, and that's a headache I'm really not trying to deal with. It would be much better from a weight perspective to do that, but I'm just not trying to do that right now. I might ultimately have to do that, but this rear frame took so much energy to put together that to have to redesign it, I'm just really not trying to do that right now. So without further ado, let me go into the list of things that I'm thinking about as far as how to add more lift to the rear. Some of them are a little more crazy than others, but nevertheless, I need to figure out some solution to this. If you're wondering about how many pounds of flotation I'm going to need back there, it's a good question. I'm not 100% sure myself, but it is going to be... It's going to be a bit, it's going to be probably a good 40 to 60, if not 50 to 70, maybe even 80 pounds of flotation would be kind of nice. At least a good 50 to 60 pounds of flotation. The board is going to give me a little bit of flotation as it starts to sink in, but I can't have the whole frame, sinking that deeply in. It causes a lot of drag, just kind of an issue. So maybe I don't need a full 80 pounds of flotation, but I'm going to need some flotation. So ideas that I've had: ice cooler. Now, granted, anything that I'm talking about, it's going to have a little mini frame kind of sticking out the back, right? And as a quick as a quick refresher of what it looks like in real life, this is the frame piece in real life. This is the base. The seat is like behind here. This is where the rudder goes. The seat is somewhere about right here. The main piece, that the seat post sticks up right there. So I'm going to be putting some kind of frame off the back of this. It kind of points to a narrow part, but the frame's going to kind of come out a little bit or something, and I'll have the flotation out there. All right. Now, and one more thing I will add is that ideally I want whatever flotation I have to have a low resistance in two directions. Let's say if we're moving along the Y direction, I suppose, or maybe the X direction, I don't know what makes more sense. Let's say the X direction. Then I want it to have low resistance when the boat's moving forward and back, and then when I'm turning, I want it to have low resistance in the plane. So something like, well, anyways, you kind of get the idea. But, you know, if you have a big fin, I don't want to have like a big fin, right? So ice cooler. I could get a big ice cooler that would provide a lot of flotation. It would also double as an ice cooler. Might be useful. Downsides, it is kind of heavy. Another thing to keep in mind besides the drag is that I sort of want to design it as a stepped hull, meaning that it's going to be in the water at low speeds, and I want it to be just high enough so that when I get up to a higher speed, it potentially is above the flow of water. So I don't want it to be really heavy because that kind of counteracts the whole point of the flotation in the first place. Number 2, a ball. Not like a basketball, but I was thinking like a beach ball, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but a sphere is the most efficient use of volume, and it's also very low drag, omnidirectional. So in fact, it's the lowest drag shape there is from an omnidirectional point of view. So if I had some kind of like little frame and netting, I could have the ball kind of centered about here. If I start getting too low, the area of the volume that is displaced of water increases, so that would be another option. Number 3, some kind of pool floats. There's a lot of different, or pool toy, you know, anything that's kind of pool toy, pool float related. Number 4 is one of my strongest contenders. Number 4 would be 2 boogie boards mounted basically directly under this, you know, such that if the bottom of the windsurfing board is here, the bottom of the boogie board is kind of like there, so a little bit higher. The only downside is that they're a little more costly, even used. People want $20 each for a used boogie board, which is kind of ridiculous. They do sell them in the 99-cent store, and I might ultimately just have to wait until they're on sale at the 99-cent store. Yeah, so boogie board's a strong contender, cost just being one of the big issues. 5-gallon buckets, very cheap. They're $5. I think the lid's a couple bucks. Gallon of water weighs about 8 pounds, so, you know, 5 times 8 is about 40 pounds of flotation. Keep in mind that's fully submerged, though, and I don't necessarily want them to be fully submerged. The downside of the bucket, of course, and I have a bucket, so I can kind of show this in a little more detail, is, you know, if you keep in mind, if the bucket is like this, you know, let's say the edge of my bat is the surfboard and the bucket's like this, there's kind of a lot of resistance. You know, this part is good for water resistance, but this bottom flat part is not really good. Now, I can mount the bucket like this, and it would be better when I'm turning if this is forward and back direction. But again, the forward and back would be slow because there'd be this big flat circle that it's going through. So very inexpensive, but at the same time, not necessarily practical from a drag point of view. Moving on the list, we have a garbage bin, something like a bigger version of that. Very inexpensive. I can get one from the 99-cent store that's, I don't know, like a 12-gallon, maybe not 12, maybe it's 8-gallon garbage bin. So a lot of flotation. Downside, I don't think they have lids for a lot of it. Now, granted, if I keep the opening high enough and cover it with even a cover that's not watertight, just needs to be kind of water resistant, unless I dump the whole thing under, it won't get full, and the whole boat's not going to sink at any rate, but structurally I'm a little worried about it too. All that water pressure, I'd have to put some buttresses in there or something. Number 7 is kind of a crazy one, but number 7 is a concrete mixing bin, and in case you don't know what I'm talking about is one of these. So might seem like kind of a ridiculous thing, and it probably is, but they they displace an amount of water, and the shape is good. You can see here, so the shape's good, relatively low resistance, kind of like a cheap boat or a barge, kind of like a barge. So not great water resistance, but not terrible water resistance, and also not very heavy. So I could put kind of a rudimentary cover over the top, just to kind of keep some splashes and stuff off. And that would give me a bit of flotation, relatively easy to mount, relatively easy. It's kind of wide, which gives me a little bit of grief because my frame is so narrow at the back there. But anyways, number 8, surfboard. I don't really want to put a whole surfboard there, but I could sort of get part of a surfboard. Surfboard's unfortunately, having to cut it, then I have to seal the end of it, and that just doesn't really work that well. An inner tube, like a inner tube for a vehicle, like a car inner tube. They don't really make them with inner tubes these days, but something like a classic inner tube would be relatively low drag. Maybe a little bit funky to mount, but wow, Home Depot, $5. Damn, how big is this thing? I don't think they have this at my local store. I tell you, for $5, awful tempting. Plus, it can be my backup bug out vehicle. I'll bug out on the boat, and then if the boat fails, I'll bug out on the damn inner tube. But yeah, that inner tube actually, they're a little heavy, but they are watertight, and they're very low drag. Tempting, very tempting. Water jugs, number 10, just basic 1-gallon water jugs, or maybe even a 5-gallon water jug. Be very interesting. Number 11, sheet foam, like insulating foam. Number 13, like a little buoy, just kind of little round floaty things, kind of related to the ball again. I don't think, it's kind of hard to find them, and they're kind of expensive, but yeah, something sort of like this is what I was thinking. But they're, $30. It's a lot of money. They're also heavy because they're supposed to be kind of tough. Bumpers do float well, if I could spell bumper right. But these things, also kind of heavy because they're supposed to be really tough, so perhaps not best from a weight point of view. And last but not least, some sort of pontoon. They actually do make things that would be relatively useful for what I'm trying to do. Yeah. Something. Here we go. Yeah, something like these guys. So that's another. Wow, that's a really slick setup. He's got the freaking poles. He's got his little frame. Look at this guy. I tell you, I'm not a super big fan of. I love kayaking. Kayaking in the ocean's pretty legit. I'm not the biggest fan of fishing, even though fishing is really cool. But oh wow, that's for standing. Oh, that's right. So you can stand on the thing. Gosh. I mean, I guess. You're not really supposed to stand on kayaks, but I guess those little pontoons would kind of help you out. In fact, I wonder how many of those I would need for my sailboat if I wasn't using surfboards. Probably at least 3 or 4 pairs of them. Interesting. It's pretty legit. Telling you, if you had 2 of these, right? This is enough for stability. You add maybe ones that are a little bit longer. Add some netting, you know, kayaks can move a bit of weight over the water, and the drag in the water is very, very low compared to, you know, hauling that weight even over land in a wagon or something. I'm gonna get sidetracked here, but look at this guy. He's got deployable pontoons. Oh, bug out boats are cool. Okay, so in conclusion to this unnecessarily long video, I need a little more flotation back here so I don't have to redesign the entire boat. I've listed some different items. If you want to see that whole list of items again, here's the list. Go ahead and pause the video. All right. Until then, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.